Hello friends, it looks like the rumors were true after all. Warhorse Studios, the team behind the Kingdom Come franchise, is apparently working on not just a new game in that series, but also a brand new Lord of the Rings RPG. The studio recently responded to all the speculation that had been floating around online and decided to just announce both projects themselves on X. Now, they didn't really share any major details about either game, but they did confirm two important things. We're getting a new Kingdom Come adventure and also an open world Middle-earth RPG. And that basically confirms a bunch of rumors we were talking about last year, especially the ones about a new Lord of the Rings game being developed by multiple studios with backing from the Abu Dhabi investment office. Now, obviously a new Kingdom Come sequel is exciting, but honestly the one that really grabbed my attention is the Lord of the Rings project. Not only because this is one of the biggest brands on the planet, but also because this is kind of a new territory for Warhorse Studios. These guys have become really good at historically grounded, systems-heavy medieval RPGs. Lord of the Rings, though, is a completely different beast. I mean, the studio already proven they can make dense, authored, systemic RPGs, sure, but with a property this massive, the expectations are going to be way higher than with any of their previous projects. And reaching something like 5 million copies in a year, like they did with Kingdom Come 2, might not even be enough this time. There is also the issue of stakeholders. With a project this big and with so many different parties involved, Warhorse may not have as much creative freedom as they used to. And that's where the risk comes in, because this could easily turn into just another generic open world adventure if the wrong decisions are made. But on the other hand, this does feel like a natural evolution for a studio that keeps taking bigger swings and actually landing them. If they pull off a top tier licensed project like this, it could really cement Warhorse as one of the go-to RPG studios in the industry. It could also push them beyond the hardcore RPG crowd and bring them a much bigger audience. And who knows, if this works, maybe it leads to even more projects on this level in the future. Also, with a developer like Warhorse, I think we can at least expect the quality bar to be pretty high. So really the big question is this: are they going to lean into what they're already great at and make a more grounded, meaningful RPG that doesn't need to become some mass market live service machine? Or are they going to be pushed toward a more conventional open world checklist kind of game, just because that's supposedly safer and more accessible? Personally, I really hope they do the first one, but with a project this big, it might not be entirely up to them. Either way, I guess we'll find out once the first trailers finally show up, right? Fortnite is coming back to the app stores after a very long legal fight with Apple. So Epic might actually get something from all the money they've been spending on their lawyer team. For anyone who missed the whole thing, here's a quick recap. Fortnite launched on Apple Store back in 2020, but it was removed pretty quickly after Epic started bypassing App Store rules by charging players directly, instead of giving Apple its usual cut. And this was not some tiny little dispute. Some reports say Fortnite had as many as 116 million iOS users before it was removed, with around 2.5 million daily active players at the time. So yeah, that was a very big pile of money for Apple to just simply ignore. From there, everything escalated into a long legal battle, and now we're finally starting to see the results. According to the official announcement, Epic CEO said this is the beginning of the end of the Apple tax worldwide. The company is saying that Apple knows the US federal court is going to force it to be more transparent, especially when it comes to how it charges App Store fees. And Epic's argument is that once Apple is forced to show its costs, governments around the world won't allow those so-called junk fees to continue. So this could mean the era of Apple and Google completely dominating the mobile space without much competition might finally start changing. But here is the question: is it already too late? Because yes, Fortnite is still one of the strongest live service ecosystems in the world, but Epic also kind of admitted that the era of endless expansion is over, when they recently laid off around 1,000 employees and admitted that the market is very different now. After all, it's not 2020 anymore. Sure, bringing Fortnite back to iOS could help recover some dormant users. It could also boost the conversion around seasonal content, cosmetics, and license events, but the number of people who are still invested in these types of games, especially on mobile, has definitely changed. So yes, this is a win for Epic, but that doesn't automatically mean they can just recover all that money and momentum they lost over the last 6 years. Of course, it's still too early to say for sure, but there is a real possibility that all this fighting was in pursuit of a dream that may not fully come back. I mean, on the other hand, if this pushes the industry away from a strict mobile store monopoly, then maybe Epic just did all the mobile developers a favor. And honestly, I'm really curious to see what the mobile landscape looks like if that happens. If you still miss Deus Ex, Saints Row and Red Faction, then there might finally be a tiny reason to get excited, because Embracer wants to, as they say, activate those IPs again. According to its recently released fiscal year 2026 report, the holding company gave a bunch of updates on some of its bigger franchises, including Metro 2039, several upcoming Tomb Raider games, Darksiders 4 and others. But what really stood out is that Embracer also highlighted some of its so-called under-leveraged brands. That includes Deus Ex, Saints Row, Thief, Red Faction and quite a few more. Now, to be clear, no actual games were announced. This is one of those investor report situations where companies say a lot without really revealing anything concrete. But at the very least, it sounds like Embracer is open to investing in those franchises again. Another interesting part of the report is that Embracer is still planning to split into two separate companies in 2027, Fellowship Entertainment and the remaining Embracer business. Fellowship will be home to the bigger IP-led premium games and licensing assets. So we're talking about things like Middle-earth Games, Crystal Dynamics and Warhorse Studios. Meanwhile, Embracer will keep the more decentralized side of the business, including niche services, mobile distribution, remakes, remasters, and basically everything that does not fall under Fellowship. And this is all a part of the same restructuring streak that has been going on for about 3 years now, ever since Embracer failed to secure that massive $2 billion deal back in 2023. But let's get back to the actual games. Overall, it's definitely encouraging to see those franchises mentioned again. It suggests they may still have some kind of a future, but at the same time, it's also kind of confusing. I get that Embracer probably wants to look flexible and wants to show investors that they have a lot of brands that could still be used and that they're keeping those names alive. But then you remember things like a new Deus Ex game being cancelled in 2024, Volition and Free Radical Design were both shut down in 2023, and with those things, a lot of people who actually had experience with those franchises are no longer at the company. And that means bringing these series back would probably require new teams, external partners, licensing deals, or some combination of all three. And that adds a lot of execution risk. Honestly, with all this restructuring and uncertainty, Embracer is starting to look a bit like Ubisoft, and I do not mean that as a compliment. Still, there is a bit of silver lining here. Maybe at least this time we really could see some of those older franchises return. Just don't hold your breath too hard. Speaking of Ubisoft, the company recently promised new Assassin's Creed, Far Cry and Ghost Recon games, all by the end of March 2029. Ubisoft also recently shared a big earnings report for fiscal year 2026. And while the company is still dealing with restructuring, underperforming titles and a lot of pressure, it's also planning for a stronger rebound in 2027. Specifically, Ubisoft says it expects a much bigger content pipeline across fiscal year 27 and fiscal year 28 focused on its major brands. That includes Assassin's Creed, Far Cry, Ghost Recon and live service growth led by Rainbow Six Siege. And because Ubisoft's fiscal year ends on March 31st, that basically means that those franchises are expected to deliver before the end of March, which in turn means new games, as it's the only logical way for them to grow. Of course, Ubisoft hasn't shared many specifics yet, so we don't know exactly which titles they're talking about. I mean, for Assassin's Creed, we already know about the Black Flag Resynced release and Hexi, which is still in development, but beyond that, a lot of it is still in the unknown category. Now, the lack of specifics isn't necessarily the problem. These are big famous franchises with long histories. The bigger issue is that Ubisoft has to work a lot harder now to make these franchises genuinely profitable and exciting again. Yes, with a little over $1 billion from Tencent, they can pour a lot of money into those games. But as Ubisoft's own financial report shows, that doesn't automatically prevent major operating losses or negative cash flows, especially with the level of quality and reception of recent games. And it's not like Ubisoft has no audience, right? I mean, the company said its games have more than 30 million annual unique active players, so there is definitely room for these projects to succeed. The problem is that the only project that really seemed to get people excited in recent years was the Black Flag remake. And honestly, a lot of that excitement comes from a pure nostalgia and nothing else. So Ubisoft has a lot of work to do. They need to win their own community back. They need to actually start listening to their players. And most importantly, they need to start making some good games that people genuinely care about again. Because after all the mistakes of the last several years, there really isn't much room left for error. And I seriously doubt that if one or two of these releases underperform, Tencent is going to be generous enough to bail them out again. Now this one felt almost inevitable, but Spellcasters Chronicles, the new free-to-play MOBA adjacent game from Quantic Dream, has been discontinued after just under 3 months in early access. The studio announced the news recently on X, and they said that while the team tried to explore new creative territory and build something bold, they entered a very difficult market and the game simply did not reach the audience it needed to be suitable long-term. Alongside the cancellation, the studio is also going through an internal reorganization, which is a corporate for "we are going to lay people off, probably." Now, the game isn't going offline immediately. It will still remain accessible until June 19th, and anyone who spent money on it will be eligible for a full refund since it was an early access title. The studio also wanted to make it clear that even though Spellcasters Chronicles is shutting down, this reorganization is not supposed to affect the other game Quantic Dream is working on, Star Wars Eclipse. And honestly, these results are not that surprising. I don't know whose idea it was for Quantic Dream to spend so much time and energy on a project like this, but it really feels like they were doing the studio a disservice. I mean, Quantic Dream's identity is narrative-driven single-player games. That's what people know them for, that's what they're good at. Spellcasters Chronicles was basically the opposite of that. And on top of all that, the game didn't have an established IP behind it, it didn't have an existing competitive community or a recognizable franchise. And for a free-to-play PvP game in today's market, that's almost a death sentence. The most worrying part here is that what it means for the rest of the studio's projects, because NetEase had previously said that if Spellcasters failed, they might have to reevaluate their commitment to Quantic Dream. Now, the studio is saying that this isn't the case right now, but the dust is only just starting to settle. Personally, I think it would be a disaster to see such a talented studio close its doors just because it was forced to play a bad hand. But, I mean, hopefully it's not all doom and gloom for them. Also, quick thing, if you don't know who I am, my name is Alex, I'm a game producer and I'm here to help you get caught up on everything that's going on in the video game industry. And now we have another publisher cancelling a game. This time it's Hasbro, or more specifically Wizards of the Coast, discontinuing development on a new D&D project. And here is some context. Last year, Hasbro and a newly formed studio Giant Skull announced a partnership to make a new single-player Dungeons & Dragons action-adventure game. Now, Giant Skull is a new studio, but it was founded by Stig Asmussen, who you might know as the director of Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, Jedi Survivor, and God of War 3. So this was supposed to be Giant Skull's debut project, and on paper it sounded pretty promising. But fast forward to now, and Bloomberg has reported that Hasbro cancelled the publishing deal with Giant Skull. The company said it decided not to move forward with the studio's proposed concept, but still values its relationship with both the studio and its founder, and hopes this won't affect any future opportunities. Which is a very corporate way of saying, yeah, this game is not happening anymore. That said, Asmussen seems to be handling it pretty well. He said he enjoyed working with Wizards of the Coast, and that even though this project was cancelled, things are good at Giant Skull. My best guess based on the timeline is that Giant Skull probably had a strong pitch, got it approved, built some kind of prototype, and then failed an internal review with Hasbro's leadership. And honestly, given the circumstances, I can understand why Hasbro might be cautious. The last time Wizards of the Coast had a project like this, it was with Larian Studios and Baldur's Gate 3, and that is a very hard act to follow, especially for a newly formed studio. Another factor is that publishers are being extremely careful with their IPs right now. Most of them are not doing anything except for sure things. But it's not like they don't want a new Dungeons & Dragons game. They clearly do. They just don't want to spend millions of dollars on an unproven concept based only on the developer's reputation. But then again, without all the details, it's hard to know what really happened. Maybe the pitch was actually great, it just wasn't safe enough for what publisher wants right now. Unfortunately, we may never know, so for now we'll just have to wait a bit longer for the next big Dungeons & Dragons game. And that's all I have for you guys so far. Let me know what do you think about new Kingdom Come and Lord of the Rings games. What are your thoughts on Fortnite being back on iOS? And if you're looking forward to kind of forgotten franchises like Deus Ex. As usual, if you want to know more, all links are down below. And of course, clicking the like button helps this channel a lot, and I personally highly appreciate it. Thank you for making it this far, and with that, Alex is signing off for today. Cheers!